she dedicated her entire life to her family. She gave up her dreams, her freedom, and her happiness, only to be betrayed and abandoned at 60. But what seemed like the end became the greatest journey of her life. The cold night wind howled against the windows of the silent house, as if trying to fill the emptiness echoing inside her. The curtains swayed slightly, casting dancing shadows on the walls, but Susan didn't notice any of it. Her eyes were fixed on the dining table. The pristine linen tablecloth, the plates arranged as always, but only one seat was occupied. Hers. In front of her, a homemade chocolate cake, just like in past birthdays when David was still a child, excited about every little detail of the celebration. Now, the cake seemed like a cruel reminder of her loneliness. The solitary candle flickered, struggling against the draft, as if hesitating between going out completely or stubbornly continuing to burn. A lump formed in Susan's throat. She had spent the whole day convincing herself that it didn't matter, that a birthday was just another ordinary day. But deep down, a part of her still hoped. A call, a message, a knock on the door. But nothing came. 60 years. 60 years of life dedicated to a family that wasn't there to celebrate her. Her husband, Richard, was out again at one of his business meetings, always running late into the night. And her son, David? He had posted pictures from an upscale restaurant, raising a toast with his wife and friends. Not a single word to the mother who had given him everything. The silence of the house echoed the truth she didn't want to admit: she was alone. She had always been. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to swallow the bitterness spreading through her chest. She needed to get up, distract herself, escape the suffocating numbness. But that night, something happened that would change everything. Susan just didn't know it yet. As she walked toward the couch to grab a blanket, her gaze fell upon Richard's coat, carelessly thrown over the armrest. On instinct, she picked it up to fold and put it away, but as she moved it, a small piece of paper slid to the floor. Something insignificant, almost trivial. But it would change everything. Slowly, Susan bent down and picked up the paper between her fingers. A hotel reservation. A recent date. A name that wasn't hers. For a moment, her mind refused to process what she was seeing. Her eyes scanned the details again, as if reading them over and over could alter reality. But it didn't. It was real. Her fingers began to tremble, and the paper nearly slipped from her grasp. The cake, the solitary candle, the silence of the house, all became an unbearable weight on her shoulders. Her heart pounded, a mix of shock, anger, and an indescribable. Susan had spent her entire life being the perfect wife, the devoted mother, the invisible woman within her own home. When she married at 23, her heart was full of dreams. She wanted to travel, to study, to see the world. But plans changed. Richard was ambitious, and he needed a wife who supported him, not someone with ambitions of her own. Later, Susan. "We'll have time for that," he would say. "Right now, we need to build a family." But later never came. The years passed, and Susan slowly faded away. At first, it was just small sacrifices. She gave up her photography course because it was too expensive. Then, she let go of the trips she had always dreamed of because there was always a more important commitment: Richard's business meetings, David's school events. In the beginning, she believed she was doing the right thing. After all, wasn't that what a good wife and mother was supposed to do? But over time, she realized that while she had nurtured the dreams of others, her own had turned to dust. She took care of everything. The house, the meals, their son's education, Richard's well-being. If he needed a special dinner after a hard day, she prepared it. If David had school projects, she helped him. If Richard wanted peace and quiet, she tiptoed around the house. But who took care of her? Richard's indifference grew stronger each year. At first, it was just rushed conversations and late nights at the office. Then, the kisses disappeared. The touch became rare. His presence in the house became purely physical. He was there, but he wasn't there. Richard spoke to her as if she were a housekeeper, not his wife. "Don't forget my suit for tomorrow, Susan. Is dinner ready? Did you pay the bills this month?" She couldn't remember the last time he had asked how she was. David's distance was an even deeper wound. He grew up, went to college, got married. In the beginning, Susan held on to the hope that her son would always come back to her. But he didn't. The visits became rare and then stopped altogether. When he called, it was out of obligation. His messages were short, automatic. "Hey, Mom, how are you? I'm in a rush, we'll talk later." But later never came. Susan watched from a distance as David built a new family. She saw his smiling photos with his wife and children, vacations, parties, gatherings. And yet, there was no sign of her. No invitation. No phone call to ask if she needed anything. She had become a ghost in her own son's life. With each passing day, Susan faded a little more, becoming a shadow in her own home. But the betrayal wasn't just romantic. It was emotional. The man she had supported for 4 decades didn't just have another woman, he was about to leave her behind completely. And, as always, David wouldn't be there to catch her when she fell. Susan thought nothing could hurt more than the betrayal. But she was wrong. The worst was yet to come. Less than a month later, Susan heard the front door open. The familiar jingle of keys against the entryway table had always signaled Richard's arrival home. But this time, something was different. She stepped out of the kitchen and found him standing in the middle of the living room, a brown leather suitcase in hand. His face was expressionless, his eyes hollow. There was no hesitation. Only a cold detachment that sent a shiver down her spine. "Susan, I think it's best if we go our separate ways. I want to experience something new. You understand, don't you?" His voice was calculated, as if he were negotiating a business deal rather than dismantling a life they had built together. Time seemed to slow. The silence between them thickened, an invisible specter lingering in the air. Susan tried to speak, but her throat tightened. The man who had shared her bed for decades, who had once vowed to stand by her side forever, was now speaking to her as if she were an employee he was letting go. "Something new," she repeated in a whisper. "After 40 years. After everything." Richard sighed, impatient, running a hand through his graying hair. "Susan, I need this. I've spent my whole life trapped in a routine, husband, father, provider. I want to live, you understand. Meet new people, feel something different. Feel something different." Her voice finally found its strength. "You mean with that woman from the hotel reservation?" Richard's gaze flickered for a brief moment, but he quickly regained his usual indifference. "I'm not going to get into those details. The fact is, I've made my decision. And, well, David already knows. He agrees that this is for the best." Susan felt as if the air had been knocked out of her lungs. David already knows. Her heart pounded. "You told our son before telling me. He understands. He's an adult. He knows these things happen. These things." Her voice trembled, a mix of disbelief and devastation. "My husband betrays me, abandons me after an entire lifetime together, and my own son simply accepts it. Like I'm some old piece of furniture, something to be discarded." Richard exhaled sharply, his irritation growing. "Susan, don't be dramatic. You'll be fine. You've always been strong." She let out a bitter, hollow laugh. "Fine. I dedicated my entire life to the two of you. Do you think it's that easy to just move on?" Richard averted his gaze and walked toward the door, picking up his suitcase. "I've already made up my mind, Susan. This is for the best." She felt the sting of tears threatening to fall, but she held them back. She would not give him that satisfaction. Slowly, she walked to the door and opened it. Standing there, gripping the handle, she stared at him one last time. "Then go, Richard. Go live your new life. But know this, when the excitement fades, when reality catches up with you, I won't be here to welcome you back." For a brief second, he hesitated. But then, without another word, he stepped past her and walked out without looking back. The door clicked shut with finality. Susan stood there, frozen, as the echo of silence filled every corner of the house that once overflowed with life. This silence was different. This silence was permanent. The life she had known was over. Alone, she slid to the floor, wrapping her arms around her knees. What was left for her now? Spending her days waiting for a call that would never come. Becoming the shadow of who she once was. No. She didn't want that fate. In the days that followed, Susan wandered through the empty house, feeling like a stranger in what was once her own world. Every room echoed with memories of a life that now slipped through her fingers. The dining table where she had spent countless evenings waiting for Richard in vain. The couch where she had cradled David in her arms when he was just a baby. The bedroom where she had once slept beside a man who, for years, had seen her as nothing more than an ornament in his carefully curated life. Now, every space was consumed by a suffocating silence. But within that silence, something was growing. It wasn't just sadness. It wasn't just loneliness. It was something fiercer, something that pulsed in her veins like a distant battle cry. A silent rage. A refusal to accept that her life would end this way, forgotten, erased, invisible. No. She would not allow that to be her fate. She had two choices: accept the life that had been forced upon her, or rewrite her own story. She climbed the attic stairs, a place she hadn't visited in years. The air was thick with dust, the dim light casting shadows over old furniture covered in white sheets. As she sifted through the forgotten relics of a past self, her hands found an old wooden chest. Her heart pounded as she lifted the creaky lid. Inside were the fragments of the woman she had once dreamed of becoming. Postcards from distant cities she had collected in her youth, believing that one day she would set foot in each of those places. Yellowed maps, with tiny circles around the destinations she had sworn to visit. Paris, Rome, Bali, Thailand. Places that had once seemed so close, but had become impossibilities as the years passed. Her fingers traced the edges of those forgotten memories, and a truth settled over her like a revelation: her time wasn't over. There was still so much to see. There was still so much to live. And, for the first time in her life, there was no one telling her she couldn't. She went to her bedroom, pulled out a suitcase, and began dismantling her old world. She sold the furniture, donated clothes, and got rid of everything she no longer wanted to carry into her new life. Then, with trembling hands, she opened her laptop and typed the words that would change everything. One-way ticket to Lisbon. On the day of her departure, as she stepped out of the house, she paused at the doorway and looked back one last time. The place that had once been her refuge was now nothing more than an empty shell. She took a deep breath. She felt fear roar inside her. But she also felt something new. For the first time in years, she was in control. Her first stop was Lisbon. The cobblestone streets, the sweet and buttery scent of pastéis de nata, the melancholic sound of fado drifting from small taverns. Susan walked slowly, almost afraid that she was intruding on a life that didn't belong to her. She felt out of place, like a stranger within her own freedom. For the first time in decades, no one expected anything from her. No one asked for dinner, no one demanded explanations. It was just her and the world. In the first few days, her actions were cautious. She had coffee at the same bakery every morning, sat on the same bench at the Miraduro de Santa Catarina, watching the Tagus River shimmer under the sun. But something within her changed with each new dawn. She began to experiment. She tasted vinho verde in a hidden tavern, danced to fado with a group of strangers, took a train to Sintra alone. For the first time, she allowed herself to enjoy the thrill of the unknown. It was then that she decided to document her experiences. She created a blog, something simple, with no expectations. Diary of a Free Woman. She wrote for herself, to organize her thoughts, but soon she realized that other women were reading. Comments started appearing. "I feel the same way you do, but I never had the courage to leave," wrote one follower. "You inspire me. Maybe I, too, can rediscover myself," said another. Susan realized she was not alone. There were so many invisible women, waiting for the right moment to exist again. It was in a cafe in Lisbon that she met Anna, a retired writer who had been reading her blog and recognized her from her picture. "You need to turn this into a book," Anna said, holding Susan's hands with sincere enthusiasm. "Women need to read your story. They need to know that it's never too late to start over." For the first time in a long while, someone truly saw her. From Lisbon, she traveled to Rome. The city pulsed with a different kind of energy. The aroma of fresh pasta, the chatter of the streets, the grandeur of the ancient architecture. In a small trattoria, she met Donna Isabella, an elderly Italian woman who welcomed her with open arms. "You need to learn to cook like a real Italian," Isabella exclaimed, placing Susan in front of a counter covered in flour. Susan laughed, really laughed, in a way she hadn't in years. She learned how to make fresh pasta, how to prepare tomato sauce the way generations before her had done, and, more than anything, she learned how to connect with people through small gestures of love that food represented. After Rome, she went to Bali. It was the place where she found the silence she had so desperately needed. She walked barefoot on the sand, feeling every grain beneath her feet. She watched the sunset without hurry, allowing herself to be wrapped in the simplicity of the moment. In a remote village, she met Lila, a Buddhist nun who introduced her to meditation. "Pain doesn't disappear, Susan. But you can choose not to carry it all the time," Lila said as they watched the waves crash onto the shore. Each destination was another piece of herself falling back into place. The fear that had once paralyzed her was dissolving. She was no longer the abandoned woman, the rejected wife, the forgotten mother. She was just Susan. A woman who, at 60, had finally chosen to live. With each new destination, Susan rediscovered herself. The fear faded, replaced by a confidence she had never known before. A year had passed, and Susan was no longer the same woman. Not just in appearance, but in essence. Her eyes held the serenity of someone who had rebuilt herself. Her steps were steady, her voice carried a certainty she had never known before. She had seen the world, found herself in every city she had visited, and now she knew, she would never again be the invisible, forgotten woman she once was. But the ghosts of her past didn't take long to return. Susan had built a new life for herself, one she never imagined possible. But the past wasn't done with her just yet. Her phone rang. A familiar number flashed on the screen. For a brief moment, she hesitated. Then, she answered. Susan, the voice on the other end was weak, strained. For a second, she barely recognized it. Susan, it's me. Richard. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She no longer felt anger. She no longer felt love. She felt nothing. What do you want, Richard? I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. He coughed, his breathing heavy. I'm sick, Susan. Alone. Linda left me. Took my money, abandoned me when I became weak. I have no one. She remained silent, staring at the ocean before her. The golden sunlight reflected off the water, a warm breeze tousling her hair. She remembered the night he had left with his suitcase, confident he was walking toward a better future without her. She remembered the lonely nights she had endured, the despair of not knowing what to do with her life after being discarded. Susan. Can we try again? I need you. She closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of his plea. But when she opened them, everything was clear. You know, Richard. I needed you once, too. And you weren't there. Her voice was calm, but sharp as a blade. And now I realize it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because I discovered that I don't need you. I never did. Susan, please. She smiled faintly, without hatred, without resentment. Take care of yourself, Richard. I've already moved on. You should do the same. And she hung up. But just when she thought she had left it all behind, another familiar voice would come asking for something. A few weeks later, the phone rang again. This time, a different number. But the familiar weight in her chest told her exactly who it was before she even answered. Mom. The silence between them was thick, heavy. David hesitated before speaking again. Mom, I know it's been a long time since we talked. But I'm going through a difficult time. His voice carried shame. I need help. She didn't respond immediately. She could feel the warm sand beneath her bare feet, the salty breeze caressing her face. It was a distant memory of the woman who had once begged for a call from him that never came. Help? Yes. I made some bad investments. Lost money. Karen wants to leave me. Things are falling apart, Anne. I know I messed up with you. But I need a loan. Just until I get back on my feet. Can you help me, Mom? The last word came as a whispered confession of guilt. Susan took a deep breath. For a long time, she had longed to hear even a trace of remorse in her son's voice. But now, it no longer mattered. David. I spent my entire life dedicated to you. Taking care of you, protecting you, sacrificing myself. And when I needed you, you turned your back on me. Her voice was firm, but not bitter. Just the truth. Today, I am a free woman. And that freedom comes at a price. I don't go back to the past. Mom, please. She closed her eyes for a moment, but the decision had already been made. Take care of yourself, David. And she hung up. Without looking back, she walked along the shore, feeling the sun warm her skin. There was no more pain. No more sadness. Only the certainty that, for the first time in her life, she had chosen herself. She smiled. The past was finally behind her. Now, Susan traveled the world, not just exploring new places, but also touching the lives of other women who, like her, had once felt trapped in a life that no longer belonged to them. Her blog had become more than just a personal diary, it was a movement. Stories poured in from all over the world. Women who had found the courage to leave unhappy marriages, to restart their careers, to finally allow themselves to live without fear. Through her travels, Susan discovered something unexpected: love. Not the desperate kind, where someone fills a void. But a light, peaceful love, one built on admiration and respect. A companion for the journey. A man who didn't want to change her, didn't want to control her, but simply wanted to share life's beautiful moments. And that was enough. Now, sitting on a white sandy beach in Thailand, she watched as the sky was painted in hues of orange and violet at sunset. Beside her lay a journal, its pages filled with her experiences, her pain, her victories. Every line was a reminder that she had not just survived, but thrived. Susan took a deep breath. She inhaled the salty ocean air, felt the warm breeze play with her hair, listened to the rhythmic sound of the waves gently breaking on the shore. In this place, far from everything that was once familiar, she finally felt at home. Not because she belonged to this land, but because, for the first time, she truly belonged to herself. She lifted her glass of wine, raising it in a silent toast to the universe. She smiled. The past no longer defined her. Life hadn't ended at 60. On the contrary, it had just begun. And if there was one lesson she wanted to leave for every woman who had followed her journey, it was this: it's never too late to start over. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories like this. Give this video a like and let me know in the comments, what would you have done if you were in Susan's place? Let's talk about it below. See you in the next video.